just want to thank the panels, and really in particular want to thank the brave children who have come forward to give us this information. And I would join my colleague in listening to the testimony, giving me the opportunity to speak and reserve my comments for the Q&A period. And I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Jared Polis. Congressman Polis is the head of the Progressive Caucus Task Force on Immigration Reform, has been a leader on that issue, and has helped guide us into what I believe is a good comprehensive set of principles that we hope to push on this immigration discussion. And a good friend, and we extend to him as well the opportunity for greetings, sir.
And I will also make my remarks after the testimony has been given. At this point, I will simply welcome all of you. Thank you for coming to Washington and sharing as part of our important process of receiving congressional testimony, your stories and your counsel as we wade through this important issue. Go back.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Kavita Shri Harsha. Did I get it right?
Yes. Thank you.
You know, I hate when they do that to my name. I got all kinds of vowels and people miss it all. But thank you. Is a senior staff attorney at Legal Momentum's Immigrant Women Program. Her work focuses on immigration policy advocacy, technical assistance relating to immigrant women's issues. As a policy advocate, she has drafted language and advocated for the passage of state and federal statutes creating protections for trafficking and domestic violence victims. She has successfully spearheaded efforts and coordinated advocacy groups in support of reauthorization of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. She also represents practitioners and victims throughout the United States in her role advocating with administrative agencies, including the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice. Her advocacy includes co-chairing the Freedom Network USA and the only human rights-based anti-trafficking coalition in the United States. Welcome, and we look forward to your comments.
Thank you, Congressman Grijalva, for your leadership in putting this together today, as well as the rest of the panel, Congresswoman Woolsey, for your leadership on all of the issues that are so close to our heart, as well as Congresswoman Moore, Congressman Polis. All of you have demonstrated so much leadership on these issues, and we are really thankful, and I'm truly thankful for this opportunity to come here today and speak to you. I couldn't agree more with you. I look forward to working with Heidi and Mateo in the future. I think they are our leaders, and they definitely represent the faces that we really are, I think, sometimes missing in the halls of Washington, D.C. when we are talking about this very important issue. And what I offer you today, I think, are some of the other voices that come to our office through the national technical assistance that we do, and hopefully that can convey some of the other pieces, I think, to what immigration enforcement is doing in the United States right now. I offer this testimony on behalf of Legal Momentum, which is the nation's oldest legal advocacy organization dedicated to advancing the rights of women and girls. As an organization concerned with the gender equity and the economic security of all women, our goal is to bring the gender lens and the voice of women into policy dialogue, research, judicial consideration, and public awareness about our broken immigration system. Many immigration policies have disproportionately adversely impacted immigrant women and children. As immigration reform moves forward, it is important to carefully analyze how current and proposed immigration laws, policies, practices, and procedures particularly impact the safety and well-being of immigrant women and children. The Immigrant Women Program of Legal Momentum serves as a national technical assistance provider on the issue of immigrant victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and trafficking. We interact with individual immigrant victims and their advocates on a daily basis and work in coalition to conduct national advocacy on their behalf. It is the experiences of these practitioners and the individuals which serve as the background for the concerns we raise today. Immigrant women's fear of law enforcement is not a new issue. Congress enacted the U visa provisions, which allow cooperative crime victims to apply for a U visa and lawful permanent residence understanding that immigrant victims need a shield of protection from deportation if they're going to feel safe calling the police. Immigrants fear law enforcement based on their experiences in their home countries. They experience language barriers in accessing law enforcement protections. And these barriers are only exacerbated when local law enforcement becomes synonymous with immigration enforcement. By providing police with the authority to enforce immigration laws, these Department of Homeland Security partnerships shift the resources and the goals of local policing from community safety to immigration enforcement. The 287G and Secure Communities programs encourage law enforcement agents to prioritize immigration status over crime prevention and crime fighting. Under these DHS programs, victims fear that their lack of immigration status will trump the criminal justice protections afforded crime victims under the law. As long as local law enforcement agencies are seen as a threat as opposed to a safe haven, immigrant victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and other violent crimes will continue to be harmed with nowhere to turn for help. Today, immigrant women subjected to family violence, exploited by their employers, and victimized by strangers live in the shadows, fearful that any call to the police will lead to that victim's deportation. Local immigration partnerships result in dangerous practices. Participants of these programs screen not only alleged perpetrators, but in some cases victims and witnesses to determine whether they have legal immigration status. In fact, I probably talk to an advocate a week who is trying to get someone out of detention based on the fact that they had come forward to report a crime as a victim or as a witness. When crime perpetrators are able to get their victim arrested, they also succeed in triggering an immigration enforcement action against them. Victims are often arrested when a non-English speaking victim calls the police for help, and the police, instead of providing interpreters, speak only to the English-speaking perpetrator. Beyond those who have already been victimized, immigrants are vulnerable to crime victimization because people know that their lack of immigration status can be exploited. Employers, landlords, and family members of undocumented immigrants know that their victims are so scared to be deported that those victims aren't going to report those crimes. Essentially, these law enforcement partnerships between police and jails and DHS increase the likelihood of abuse and assault against immigrant women and children by cutting them off from the help and giving their perpetrators a powerful tool to silence victims and escape prosecution. In immigrant communities, word spreads quickly, and immigrants fear that reporting a crime to the police will lead to the victim's deportation. This undermines years of successful community policing efforts aimed at building relationships with immigrant communities so that law enforcement agencies can more effectively fight crime. The 287G and Secure Communities programs have the real-life effect of creating a two-tier society in which immigrant victims have less access to police protections than their counterpart community members. As immigrant victims are deterred from reporting crimes, perpetrators are not held accountable for those crimes. A perpetrator who victimizes an undocumented immigrant is just as capable of committing the same crime against a U.S. citizen. For the many crimes that are serial in nature, failure to investigate these crimes increases the number of community members at risk for crime victimization. Immigrant women who experience domestic violence and sexual assault at alarming rates are increasingly vulnerable to exploitative employers. But when police are enforcing immigration laws, they can no longer seek help and participate in the criminal justice system. Programs undermining the public safety mission of local law enforcement jeopardize not only the safety of immigrants, but as a consequence, the safety of all women and really all community members. So then, once immigration enforcement happens, we have the result of immigrant women in detention separated from their children, the topic that we're here to talk about today. Immigration enforcement measures have disastrous consequences for immigrant women, many of whom are mothers. Across the country, courts are terminating parental relationships while mothers are being detained. We have heard this today. Children of undocumented immigrants are being placed in foster care. Mothers, many of whom are actually eligible for immigration relief but don't realize it, are deported while their children are separated from them, left in the U.S. The Help Separated Children Act is designed to address this problem. Legal Momentum is collecting stories currently that illustrate the impact of these separations on immigrant children.